Good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. My name is Annette Curbo. I'm one of the health compliance officers here at the Arlington Health Department. We appreciate you all taking the time to join us to go over this topic tonight. So I will let you know that tonight this presentation is being recorded so that folks who can't make it this evening will still be able to learn and watch it on our website at a later date. So for this evening, we have a few presenters. We are starting with John Magaranis, who is starting out with the presentation, Living with Coyotes. He's a former Belmont Animal Control Officer and also the Massachusetts representative for Project Coyote. So we decided to do this presentation following recent events here in Arlington. Over the summer, we saw several encounters between coyotes with humans and also animals. So we just wanted to take the time to really teach the community information about how coyote behavior should be, what we're seeing, and how to safely interact with coyotes. So following the presentation, we'll also have some question and answer time. So if you didn't submit questions prior to the presentation but want to submit them during, please use the question and answer function. We'll be monitoring that during the presentation and getting to as many questions as we can after the presentation. So make sure that you send those in throughout as questions come up in your mind so we can address them. So now we'll go ahead and get started, and I will hand it over to John for his presentation.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. There's a lot of work went into this tonight, so special thanks to the Health Department, Mass Fish and Wildlife, Environmental Police, and Animal Control Officer. So without any ado, tonight I realize there's a lot of questions and anxiety and issues going on there in Arlington, and I hope tonight that I'll be able to quell some of those fears for you. I have a motto, which is knowledge conquers fear. So I hope by the end of the night that you'll feel a little bit better about having coyotes in your town. So tonight I'll be giving you general information about coyotes and their natural behavior, about coexistence, human and pet safety, and hazing the right way. And I'll be showing you some pictures of coyotes that I've taken through the years. I think all of these pictures you'll see are coyotes that I photographed in Belmont when I was the animal control officer. And this guy here, actually I took a picture of this guy in Cambridge, and he's a real special coyote because his mate, she was completely lame. She had a heel fracture in her right rear leg, long bone fracture, one that just, she just can't really put any weight on it hardly at all. So she's not an effective hunter. But this guy here, her mate, he would hunt for her and the pups. And before I retired, there was at least 3 years of successful litters. And that's really a tribute to this coyote because a lot of times when they get injured like that, they don't survive very well. So the Eastern coyote, they mate for life. They have the same gestation period as a dog, 63 days. The pups usually are weaned between 6 and 8 weeks, at which time they come out of the den. The den site becomes kind of like a rendezvous site for most of the summer. And interesting, a lot of people tell me, well, I saw there was, 3 or 4 dens in my town, and you got, 5 or 10 pups per den. So, there's going to be, all these coyotes running around. Well, the fact is between 50 and 70% of those pups are not going to make it through the first year. So really there's no overabundance of coyotes like a lot of people would think. The alpha female, which I'm not sure if we're going to get into talking about this part of it later on, but it's important to note that she's the enforcer of the pack. And you can read here the lifespan of wild 4 to 5 years, but I can tell you I personally have tracked a same coyote family for up to 8 years. So these numbers can be different. And they establish and defend territories, which I would love to talk about. So here's a little map. So here's Arlington, Belmont. I'm not sure of your exact perimeter or boundaries, but let's just say you've got two coyotes right here, alpha male and female, and they have a territory. That territory could be over here. You could have a couple of coyotes down here in Medford, alpha male and female, and their territory could be like that. And the same over here in Belmont. So the coyotes that you see running around in Arlington may not necessarily be living in Arlington. So I just want to point that out. Okay, so also January, February, people who have large dogs need to heed this information. Typically, we're worried about small dogs and cats as far as coyotes preying on them, and not normally concerned about, larger dogs, 50, 60-pound dogs. But in January and February, when coyotes are mating and they're competing for territories, competing for mates, testosterone is high, hormones are high. So you can imagine to be running your big dog off leash. I don't recommend running them off leash really anytime, but if you do have a big dog and you want to run them off leash, January, February is not the time to do it. So the pups are cared for by both the male and female. Coyotes form very, very strong family structures and bonds. If you ever get to watch some videos of coyote families interacting together, it's really something special to see. But otherwise, the pups will stick around with the parents all summer long. The parents will teach them how to hunt and be good coyotes. And then come, October, November, this time of year, most of them will disperse, which means they'll go on their way to find their own territories, their own mates, and own places to live. But some coyote pups will stay, and some of those pups will actually kind of help rear the next litter next year or even the year after. So it may be common, or not common, but you may end up seeing 6, 8 coyotes together at one time, or in perhaps even more. I think the most I've ever seen at one time was 8. And it's important to know that when you see a whole bunch of coyotes, they're all going to be related except mom and dad. Those are the 2 alphas. The rest are all going to be related. So dens, they're usually reused, but when I say that, that's like out in the deep woods here around Arlington and all the closest city towns. There's not much space out there for dens, so they're gonna find really good places for them and keep them hidden, and hopefully they don't get disturbed. But out in the woods, they may dig a couple of dens. A lot of people, you've heard this saying, I saw this coyote in broad daylight. It always cracks me up. It's like, like they robbed a bank in broad daylight, which makes it really bad. Well, the fact is that coyotes are not nocturnal. So seeing them out in broad daylight is completely normal behavior. And people need to know that, because a lot of people think, well, it's out during the day, we're gonna need to kill it because it's got rabies. A lot of people think the same about skunks and raccoons, and it just isn't the case. They need to be evaluated. Coyotes are also neophobic, which means they're afraid of new things in their environment. A few years ago, I recall, I believe it was an email, where this woman was photographing on her security cameras coyotes going through her backyard almost nightly, and she really liked that idea. So she read somewhere something about them being neophobic. So she went out and she bought a bunch of pinwheels and she stuck them in the perimeter of her backyard, never to see a coyote again. So it might be something for some of you to try if you don't want, coyotes coming through your yard or whatever. This is a really oddball looking coyote, but it is a 100% DNA tested coyote. Taken by a friend of mine, Dr. John DeWay, down in Barnstable. Okay, getting back to coyotes. Just as dogs, they can get all these same diseases: distemper, rabies, mange, lice, mites, fleas, ticks, and intestinal parasites. I'd like to address this. A lot of times, whenever I'm out hiking or out and about, and I come across a coyote scat, I always poke through it because I want to see what he's eating. And 9 times out of 10, I'm finding tapeworm segments in their stools. And it really bums me out because they got them from dogs. They got them from people who walked their dogs in the woods and let them poop and didn't pick it up. And so by doing that, you're just spreading tapeworms and other worms to what might be an otherwise healthy coyote or wildlife population. So please, if you're going to take your dogs out in the woods, have them tested every 6 months at least for parasites. And if they have them, get them taken care of, please. And rodenticide, I want to address this. I'm very passionate about this. There is a strong correlation between rat poison and mange. And I'm not going to go into the whole thing about it, but I do want to mention this about rat poison. People who use rat poison are basically killing the same animals that would eat the rats, like fox, red and gray fox, coyotes, fishers, owls, hawks. I can't tell you how many owls I took to Tufts Wildlife Clinic that ended up dying from rodenticide poisoning. So please use a snap trap. It kills them dead. You just throw it in the trash and you're done with it. So, and remember, all these ailments that these wildlife get, nobody's going to take them to a veterinarian. And this is a picture of a pup that's got mange. You can see his eyes are already swollen. He's got just patches of fur. He's thin. Very hard to hunt when you're shaking all around because you're scratching yourself. So it's a horrible disease. It really is. This is a coyote that I trapped a long time ago, and people need to know that this is no longer legal. You can't do this anymore. So I did this when it was okay under the umbrella of an animal control officer. So please don't engage in this activity. But this is an example of a coyote with really bad mange. You see that this is chewing himself due to the profuse itching because it's a mite and it's crawling around underneath the skin and it just causes this unbelievable itching. And believe me, I know because I've had it. So here again, you can see it chewed right down to the layer of skin. It's just awful, 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 awful. So I took him out to the Tufts Wildlife Clinic. Mass Fish and Wildlife come out and gave her a nice new earring, and then we turned her loose, and she did very well. And I actually have a video of the release, but because there's going to be so many questions later on, we'll just skip over that unless we have time. Well, that's it, but we're going to skip it. Here's another example of a coyote pup that's got mange. He also has a secondary bacterial skin infection. So once again, off to Tufts Wildlife Clinic, and they did their wonderful things as they always do. So getting back to coyotes, these guys are opportunistic feeders. They don't have any set diet. They'll eat whatever comes along. They'll spend their days traveling through their territories and eating whatever comes along the way. Most of their food is rodents. It's 75% or more of their diet consists of rodents. However, they will prey on pets, and they'll only prey on pets given the opportunity, which means the days of letting your little dog out in your backyard, at 2 o'clock in the morning for 5 minutes to go to the bathroom are over. You have got to be with your dog. That's just the way it is. And I will explain. I'm not going to just say that's the way it is without explaining why during the course of this presentation. And I have here a little asterisk including about the white-footed mouse. It's just an observation that Lyme disease has to go through the white-footed mouse. And so I believe, and I'm sure there's no research on this, but this is my own feeling, that if you're talking about an animal that's eating 1,800 rodents a year, and the white-footed mouse is a rodent, that I think there's a good possibility that the incidence of Lyme disease may not be as steep as it would be without coyotes. That's my own thought. There's nothing to back that up, but just my own thought, my own thinking. You may see coyotes up in trees. Believe me, it happens. This is really bad pictures. I tried to grab some off the internet, but coyotes will definitely climb trees. We used to say the only canid that climbed trees was a gray fox, but now we know that the mighty eastern coyote can do the same thing. And they'll get up there and eat apples or whatever, so not uncommon. But this sequence of pictures that you're going to see is what a typical coyote would do for hunting. They have very great, very good hearing. These ears are just made for funneling sound right deep in there. So this coyote, sniffing around, could also hear this little vole run around, pulled them out of the snow, chased it down, and had a great meal. And if you look at the size of this vole and the body mass of this coyote, that's a really good meal. That's like steak, potatoes, salad, and a glass of vino on the side. So that coyote had a very good meal that day. Unfortunately, this beautiful, beautiful coyote was killed 2 days after I photographed it in Arlington, got hit by a car. So where can you find coyotes in Massachusetts? Everywhere, including Martha's Vineyard. I don't know if anyone has brought this up before, but several years ago I was in the Martha's Vineyard, and I was able to find some coyote tracks. So I know at least then that they were there. They're phenomenal swimmers. I'm not sure if they'll pay a ferry to get over there or not, but they are great swimmers, and I know that just being there myself and seeing their tracks that they have been there, they're probably still there, I'm sure. And I don't know about the other big island, but as far as Martha's Vineyard and every other place in Massachusetts, we have coyotes. Everyone that's attending or listening to this presentation is sitting smack dab in a coyote territory. Can coyotes carry rabies? Absolutely, it's a mammal. I believe, and there's no research backing this up, but if you consider an animal that's an opportunistic feeder, and then you consider the types of rabies, we have two types of rabies: furious rabies and dumb rabies. Furious rabies is what everybody thinks about when they think about rabies: foaming at the mouth, aggression, attacking everything. Yeah, that does happen, but it's not near as common as dumb rabies. And dumb rabies is rabies that just affects the animal to where it just gets sick. It's a neurological disease, may walk in circles, could be falling down, could be, bumping into a wall, all kinds of stuff. And those are the signs that are going to show an opportunistic predator like a coyote that, hey, maybe I can just go eat this guy. Because normally, the things that get rabies around here would be, skunks, raccoons, those kind of things. Raccoons are really tough. Most times, coyotes are not going to mess around with the healthy raccoon. But if he's sick with rabies and he's stumbling around, falling, a coyote will recognize that. So I believe, again, this is my own thinking, that having coyotes around may reduce those spikes in rabies outbreaks here in Massachusetts. Otherwise, we can all just kind of look at this crazy coyote and scratch our head about rabies. There's some beautiful pictures. These are all pictures I've taken in Belmont. This coyote here, I think, is pregnant. Beautiful. Anyway, let's look at some statistics here. And I'm not sure why, but the state lab used to post these results just about monthly, but up until December 2018, they just kind of stopped. So you got 26 years of data here. And what this data reflects is animals that were tested positive for rabies, okay? So what I want you to pay attention to is the three top ones: raccoons, skunks, and foxes, all nocturnal animals. So those of you that have cats, like me, although not like me, because I would never, ever let my cat out. But there's a lot of people who feel like cats they have to be outside to stimulate their predatory, whatever it is, blah, 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 blah. 20 years I was in the military as a veterinary technician, and I never worked for a veterinarian that would ever say it was good for cats to go outside, because it's not. And look, this is the reason right here. You got all these predators that would eat cats. So that's why you have so many cats that have been tested positive for rabies as well, because they're hanging out with the guys that get it the most. And down here we have only 16 coyotes. So there you have it. To me, that's pretty eye-opening statistics. There's a lovely coyote. You'll see a lot of my pictures with this stuff here. It's the old town dump in Belmont. They used to, they probably still do it, but they dump leaves up there, and it's a great place, for municipal employees, because it's sealed off. You can't, as a private citizen, just walk in there, come in the back gate or whatever. So it was a great place for me to always go and look for coyotes, and I saw them frequently. Coyotes are perfectly suited for suburban living. Arlington, Belmont, Lexington, those towns are just perfect for coyotes. And the reason is because there's a lot of space. There's a lot of, pockets of green space, places where they can go and they hide. There's also a lot of wealthy people that have really big yards, and those yards can provide some great cover and concealment for coyotes. Coyotes need three things. They need food, water, and they need to feel, wherever they're at, that a sense of peace, of safety. They have to feel safe where they're at. So they can go behind somebody's garage during the day, where they just want to chill out, be quiet, when nobody sees them. They'll seek out places like that. So in woodland corridors, they can use them for if available, for movement. But nowadays we're seeing coyotes, jogging up and down the streets like they own them. So woodland corridors and stuff like that, that might have been useful 10 years ago. But as they filter in and they get more comfortable, they'll use less of those. We hear this a lot about land development displaces wildlife into our neighborhoods and backyards. And I'm sure that's true for a lot of animals. But I don't think it's all that true for coyotes. Coyotes are kind of still, what's the word I want? They're in the process of evolution. These animals are developing into another, which I think is going to eventually replace the wolf. But they're not the type of animal that's going to be displaced. These guys are just kind of filtering in. They're seeking out towns like Belmont and Arlington, Cambridge, because of food. It's abundant food, and easy food is easy food. So why run around and exhaust yourself when you can just kind of take it easy and get the free or abundant food? This is a beautiful picture I took. I love this picture. It's awesome. And I totally get it where people, when I start talking about hazing and standing your ground and all that kind of stuff, which we will get into, a lot of people, you look at this could be a scary thing to see. And I get that. I really get that. But there are ways to deal with that, and we'll talk more about it. Okay, Mass Fish and Wildlife might have a better number than I do. I lost count about, 2-3 years ago after I had surgery. So I'm sure there's probably more than 22, but roughly 22 coyote bites on humans in the past 65, 70 years in Massachusetts. And 4 of those were confirmed to have rabies, and 1, based on description, was believed to have rabies. So if you compare that to dogs, which I don't have that slide, I didn't include it, but if you compare it to dogs, you'll just be shocked, because dogs are out there biting all the time. When I was an animal control officer in Belmont, I would say that on average, I did 2 to 3 quarantines a month, which involved a dog biting another dog or a person. And so, compare that to 22 coyote bites. There's no comparison. It's incredible. So when you call your animal control officer and you say, "Hey, Diane, there's a coyote in my backyard," she might say, "Well, okay, let me know if it starts acting, oddly or whatever," and she'll talk to you more about it. But she's doing that because she knows that there are more important things out there, like dogs that are biting. Dogs kill people. We have what, 15 to 20 fatalities a year in the United States from dogs killing people. We don't have that with coyotes. So just to kind of put things in perspective. Coyotes who rely on natural food usually are very shy and elusive towards people. They really don't want much to do with us. They just want to raise their kids and have enough food and survive just like the rest of us. If you encounter coyotes, scaring them away is incredibly easy. And we call that hazing. And it's very, very effective when it's done properly. Beautiful coyote. and no, this stuff wasn't caught on his leg. I made sure of that. He was Kyle was just very curious of me, checking me out. If I remember right, it was about this time of year. And about this time of year, when you have the coyote pups that are dispersing from this year's litters, a lot of them are very curious. And you may just end up walking down a path and turning around and seeing a young coyote looking at you or following you. It's very common. We animal control officers get calls all the time, all through October and November. It's incredible. Okay, so hazing. I've been in touch with my ACO counterparts, and what I'm hearing in the last 5-10 years is that they're calling me up and say, "John, I don't know what's going on with my coyotes in my town. People are yelling at them, waving their hands, and they're just not budging." Well, there's a reason for that I'll talk about in a minute. It's just not effective anymore because, like I said, I'll cover that in a second. And so in order for hazing to be effective, you have to completely scare the coyote away. And you got to show your dominance. You got to stand your ground. You got to be brave. You got to puff your chest out. You got to look like you are the predator. And I'm going to go over how to do it, in detail in a minute or so. And like I said, be brave. This is a scary looking coyote. Believe me, I know. I was the one who took this picture, although I wasn't afraid of him because I understand him. This coyote was just trying to get back to its den, and I was in its way. Okay, so when shouldn't you haze? Should always take a moment to observe. Okay, look at the coyote. Let me give you an example. Say you look out your kitchen window into your backyard, and out in your backyard there's a coyote all curled up, look like he's just having an afternoon nap. You don't want him in your backyard because you've got kids, so you want to haze him. So you open your back door, and as soon as you do that, he hears it, pops his head up, looks at you, turns around and runs away. That's a coyote that you don't have to haze because he's obviously showing you that he is petrified of people and doesn't want anything to do with people. So, and that's the natural behavior of a coyote who hasn't been exposed to that many people previously. That's the reaction that you're going to get. You don't want to haze a coyote when you observe nervous posturing. And I'll show you pictures of that because it might be a den or, a den with pups. And you never want to haze an animal that's sick or injured. When you take a moment to observe the coyote, look very closely. Look for blood. look for flies. Flies are an indication of an open wound that's been open for a few days, and that is not a good thing. So if you see blood, if you see flies all around it, don't try to haze it. Call your animal control officer. She knows what to do, and she'll take care of it. Okay, posturing. This coyote here is posturing. He's telling either a person or a dog, most likely a dog, that he's very uncomfortable with you there and wants you to leave. And he's doing it with that huge arch in his back. He's got his tail tucked up underneath there. He's snarling and growling, but not attacking. Here's another picture. Now, this dog is the series of pictures that I saw and I discussed with Janet is that this dog was kind of oblivious. He really didn't care about the coyote. He's just happy he was outside and came across this coyote and these pictures were taken. But this coyote is again snarling. He's got the ears back. He's starting to arch that back, and he's letting that dog know he does not want him there. This is another coyote, again, snarling. That back is arched. He's got the tail tucked way up under there. He's telling whoever, stay away from my chicken, or whatever that is. So he's posturing. He's communicating without his biting you. He's telling whoever or whatever, I need you to go away. I'm uncomfortable with you being there. So when you see this kind of stuff, that's when you need to respect that animal and leave. Okay. So again, another picture, coyotes, looking right at him. He's telling him, get out of my territory. Old dog here doesn't really care at all. He's just happy he's outside, right? And one last picture here, again, that tail tucked way up high. He's snarling, growling, hair up, everything. And if you look at this picture, this coyote could easily attack this dog, but there's consequences with that. There's risk with that. If you go on the attack and you get bit as a wild animal, that's risky. So that's not going to be their first choice. Okay, so here's why I usually give a great hazing demonstration, but I guess I'm going to have to try to explain it to you, which I think I can do. Okay. See if I give you an example. Okay, here's an example. The same thing. You're doing the dishes. You look out the back window, and there's a coyote out in your backyard, and he's curled up, and he's just having a good old time, taking a nice nap in the sun. And you got some kids at home or in the house, and you don't want this coyote there. So you're going to step out on your back deck. And the first thing you do is you're going to observe this animal, just like I said before, right? Okay, so you observe this animal. He picks his head up and he looks at you, doesn't get up, doesn't stand up. He's still curled up on the ground, picks his head up, he looks at you, and then puts his head back down like, I could care less of you. And at that point, he probably really he's not overly concerned about you there. He knows exactly where you're at and that you're there, but he's not really concerned. So now this is obvious signs that you need to haze this coyote. So what I have done in the past, and I implore people to grab a stick, have a nice walking stick. I have a beautiful stick that I got like the first couple of weeks I was working at Belmont. I still have it. It's leaning up against the wall right now. But grab a stick, have a walking stick, because that's going to give you a little bit of confidence. Not that you're going to ever need it, but it'll give you that confidence that you might need to go out there and haze this coyote, because you need to do this, okay? So he picks his head up, puts his head back down. Now what you're going to do is you're going to start walking towards him briskly. And I mean briskly, and you're going to be puffing out, and you're going to be looking directly at him. And eventually, I don't know how many, I can't tell you how many feet, but for me, I could give you an example of one I did. I got within like 15 feet of it when he finally lifted his head, and I could see the little the little light bulb go off in his head and say, oh, wait a minute, this guy means business. So then you just charge right at him. And now what's going to happen is that coyote's going to get up and he's going to run away. Typical coyote behavior, he's going to run for maybe, 50 yards, 50 feet, whatever. And he's going to stop, turn around, and reevaluate, okay? Just like this coyote's doing, stopping, turning around, and reevaluate. If he sees you walking into the house, declaring victory, ready to open a Sam Adams and celebrating because you hazed that coyote, you're wrong. If you don't follow through, you just taught him that walking towards it briskly means nothing. There has to be a negative end result, okay? So follow me here. Okay, so now you charge, you're walking briskly, you get the coyote's attention, he stands up and he takes off, okay? You keep going, okay? This is where people haven't been taught to do. You need to keep walking towards that coyote, not running, not leisurely, but walking briskly, puffing out your chest, trying to look big, and just keep going towards that coyote. Eventually, he's going to turn around again, see you coming, and that's it. He's going to be gone. And then once he's out of your view, just stop, put your hands on your hips, puff your chest out, and look like you're a predator. Look like you're looking for him, because he probably still sees you. And by doing all this, you're sending a very strong message to that coyote saying, you're not welcome on my property. And see, the reason why we have to do this is because for so long, people would see coyotes and they didn't understand them. They didn't know anything about them. This is a while ago. So people would see them and they would be scared. So what would they do? We'd back up or go around them. We'd run away. So we always provided them that sense of safety. And so although people say it's bold behavior, it's not bold behavior, it's learned behavior. They have learned from us that we will give them the space that they need to feel safe in. So now we have to turn that around. We have to do simple behavior modification. We do it with dogs every single day. It works. You just got to get out there and do it. You got to remember, your animal control officer can't be everywhere in town, okay? She can't come to every time somebody calls and says, oh, there's a coyote in my backyard. She can't pack up and zip on over there. Probably the thing's going to be gone anyway, but she just can't be everywhere at once. This is an animal that the community has got to get involved. I'm not going to say that, but it is very, very effective if the community gets involved. I can help teach how to do hazing in more detail, but it's really simple. Neighborhood associations are kind of popping up. It's a new thing where everyone's kind of hooked up by email. And I've learned that those associations are great. The great things to have in terms of hazing coyotes, because, say a coyote comes in your backyard and you're not really comfortable hazing it. Well, you get on the email, say, oh, there's a coyote in my backyard, get those hazers out here. And a couple of your neighbors come out there and haze the coyote. And it works. You might want to keep records. It might be beneficial for the animal control officer or environmental police, but you got to get out there and do it. You can't rely on environmental police or Mass Fish and Wildlife or myself or anybody else to get rid of coyotes. They're not going anywhere. We're just never going to get rid of them. So we got to get proactive and take the streets back ourselves. So our plan of action is understand and appreciate what coyotes do for us. And I haven't talked about a lot about the good things they do, but anyone who gardens here in Arlington knows that those fat little critters called woodchucks, how much of a pain they can be, and the rabbits and all that. Having coyotes around is a good thing for rodent control. And I do want to say this, for all you people that have gardens and you don't like the woodchucks and the rabbits, and you consider yourself a very humane person, and you decide, well, I'm going to humanely trap these animals and take them down take them down to Belmont and release them in Rock Meadow. And you may walk away thinking you did a great thing, but the fact is, A, it's illegal. Okay, you can't do that. It's illegal. If I would have caught you, I'd write you up. I don't know about Diane or anybody else, but personally, me, if I caught somebody trapping, I would educate them first, but the second time they would get a stiff fine from me. But anyway, the second reason, not just because it's illegal, but the reasoning behind that is that, animals can have, like, say, rabies, for instance. You can get rabies and carry that disease for up to 6 months before you even show any signs. So say that little Mr. Friendly Woodchuck was eating all your tomatoes, driving you crazy, and you trap him, and you take him out to Rock Meadow and release him. Well, he could have rabies. So you could have just taken that unhealthy animal and infected, which otherwise would have been a healthy population of woodchucks. So that's one reason. And another reason is most all animals have territories. So if you take the woodchuck and you dump him in the middle of Rock Meadow, you're probably going to dump him right in some other woodchuck's territory who's not going to be happy about it. And so what happens is these animals end up getting attacked over and over again and die from their wounds and suffering. So those are the two main reasons why it's illegal in Massachusetts. That's the reasoning why. So please don't trap them. Get with Diane or call me. You can look up my number. I have a whole bunch of ways of keeping humanely excluding animals from your gardens and stuff. So please do that. Establish hazing programs. You can do that in your own city. Again, your animal control officer is one of the best as far as I'm concerned. And she knows what she's doing, but she can't be everywhere. So you guys got to jump in and help her out. All the citizens in Arlington can certainly participate. They can certainly contribute. And it's really what's going to take control of stuff here. Keep your pets vaccinated and leashed. Unfortunately, we are in a time where you just can't leave your small pets unattended. It's just not a good thing to do. Coyotes are everywhere. And I don't mean overpopulating. They don't overpopulate. They're self-regulating animals. But anyway, keep your pets leashed. There's been no attacks to my knowledge in environmental police and Mass Fish and Wildlife may comment on this after I'm done, but I don't think there's been any attacks on dogs that are on the end of a 6 or 4 foot leash, and the reason is because there's a person connected to the other end and they don't like people. So keep them leashed and you shouldn't have any issues, and protected. And I mean, when I say protected, I mean this. You have a cat, it's your duty, it's your responsibility to take care of that animal. Cat, dog, whatever, iguana, I don't care what it is. If you have a pet, it's your responsibility to take care of that pet to the best of your ability. So if you know that there's coyotes walking around, then please don't put your dog out out in your backyard at 2 o'clock in the morning and go in the house and wait for it. It's just not, we're just not there yet. And it's just going to end up, bad, really bad. And I love dogs more than anything in the world. And it's one of the number one things that drives me to do this, because I just don't want to see any more dogs hurt. So please keep your animals protected. And also never feed coyotes or any wildlife. It's the number one cause of coyote conflicts. And if I was a betting man, I would bet my Harley that the coyote that has been involved in the last month or so has probably been fed by somebody who thinks that they're doing a good thing. But whoever is feeding it and is listening tonight, I beg you to please stop, because what's going to happen is you're going to end up getting the animal that you love killed, because when coyotes get fed and then the feeding stops, well, they just start expecting food from people, and that's where problems happen. So please don't feed coyotes. And there's two types of feeding here. There's intentional and unintentional. You know, if you've got an apple tree in your backyard, you saw the pictures, right? Clean up those apples or pears or whatever it is. Clean up those fruit trees. Don't let those the fruit, you know, lay on the ground, because that's going to attract coyotes. It's also going to attract rodents, which attracts coyotes. Coyote proof your outdoor space, like bird feeders. Bird feeders may not attract a coyote per se, but they'll certainly attract rodents, and that's their number one food supply. So if you're not out there cleaning up your bird, you know, your bird feeders, then you're most likely going to end up attracting coyotes. Bushes. If you have coyotes, are kind of like ambush hunters. So if you have bushes that are, you know, growing from the ground up, trim them a foot or two off the ground. So, you know, take away those hiding spots that coyotes can hang out in. If you got a garage that's set way back, go behind it every now and then. Check out. You know, it's usually the spot where most of us dump our lawn debris and our, you know, branches that come down, stuff like that, including me. So, you know, it's a good place to go look every now and then and make sure that there isn't a den being dug up in there, and or signs and activity of coyote in there. And, you know, coyote management is really people management. And I want to stress to everyone that, you know, I love coyotes, but I love dogs more. I hate to see any dog bitten or killed. I hate to see any children or people bitten. But the fact is these animals aren't going away. We're not going to get rid of them. It's impossible. And we just really just have to learn a little bit on how to deal with them. So, again, coyote management is people management. They may be looking at you, but a lot of times it's just flat out curiosity. So to conclude, they're here to stay. Use common sense. There's a lot of stuff I hear out there that just it makes me laugh. It's like, you know, where's the common sense of that? But just use common sense. We're not getting rid of them. Many places in states and jurisdictions have tried to eradicate coyotes, and all that have tried have failed miserably. They just bounce right back. And there is a saying, killing coyotes makes more coyotes. And we could talk about that at another time. But right now, if we just learn about coyotes, haze them when we need to, know the facts, don't buy into a lot of stuff you hear on social media. There's a lot of misinformation out there. Take a stand, be proactive. Remember, the environment helps everyone. It needs everyone's help. So be proactive. And I hope you enjoyed what I had to say tonight. I can throw this up again if somebody needs to see it, but otherwise, thank you so much. And I think it's Q&A time.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much, John. We really appreciate all of this information. At this time, I'd like to invite all of our panelists to turn on their cameras. We have a number of other experts who are going to be available to answer questions during this time. So we're going to answer questions that were submitted, as well as a number of questions that were answered during this presentation. We'll do our best to get to all that we have available, but we probably can only extend this till about 7:30. So we'll do the best we can to get to as many questions. And then anything we don't get to will be posted on arlingtonma.gov. We'll provide answers to the remaining questions that we can't get to. So I'd like to first introduce, we have Diane Welch here. She's our Arlington Animal Control Officer. We also have Dave Waddles. He is a black bear and fur bear biologist with the Massachusetts Division of Fisheries and Wildlife. So thank you all so much for being on the presentation today. And Dave, I'd like to go to you first and just give you an opportunity to talk a little bit about the behaviors we've been seeing in coyotes here in Arlington, particularly in the couple of incidences that we've had with children and animals. Would you say those are normal behaviors, or is that something a little bit abnormal that we're seeing?
Yeah, these are certainly abnormal behaviors. Coyotes biting humans are really very rare, as John said. We only have had 22, as he said, that have ever occurred in Massachusetts. And to have 3 occurring in one town really is an exceptional set of circumstances. Normal coyotes aren't doing that. We've only had 1 other incident in Massachusetts this year, and this is at a known location on the Cape where someone is intentionally feeding coyotes. And there's been someone bitten on that beach the last 2 years as a result of that. So that demonstrates the effects that intentional feeding and feeding wildlife can have in terms of their likelihood to perform these sorts of behaviors.
Thanks for that. And given that this is a little bit abnormal behavior, John, would you say that there's anything that people should do in terms of hazing if they're outside with, let's say, a small pet or their small child? What kind of additional steps and protections could they take in place in trying to scare that coyote off?
It's really hard to sum up, without having all the details. But in general, if you're out there, say you're walking a small dog, because a lot of people ask me this. So what do you do if you're walking and you have a small dog with you and you come across a coyote? I recommend you pick them up and put them in your shirt, jacket, one of the two. And I recommend that because you know how little dogs are. They have testosterone the size of, Empire State Building, and they'll take on anything. So you don't want him squirming all around, getting out of your hands. So you want to put him in your jacket and really hold him there because he's going to be yak, 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 yak. And then just back up. Keep your eyes on the coyote. Don't ever take your eyes off him. And this is not something you want to do with a dog, okay? It's very different with a dog. So with a coyote, you keep that eye contact and you just back up and leave the area. If it's a big dog, I would just choke up on the leash. I would watch those signs, depending on what time of year. If it's, May, June, and a coyote's out posturing in front of me, that could, possibly mean that we got pups. So it just depends on time of year and exactly what happens. Again, I recommend people have a walking stick. It not only gives you confidence, but if in case you would ever need it, which I can't imagine you ever would, you have something to defend yourself.
It's good you mentioned the stick. We've gotten a lot of questions as well about what other types of tools may assist in hazing. So some of the examples folks are wondering if they're useful is having an automatic pop-up umbrella or using a loud noise maker. I know you mentioned that pots and pans are not as much effective, but would you say that like loud noisemakers or anything that may create a large shape or noise may be good? Dave, it sounds like you have a answer.
Well, I just want to, one of the reasons that the banging the pots and pans isn't as effective is often people will call me about a coyote issue they're having in their backyard, and they'll say they opened the sliding glass door and they yelled, or they banged the pots and pans and then they ducked inside. As John said, when you do that, you're essentially saying to the coyote, hey, I'm here, but you can have my backyard. And so right. The coyote doesn't necessarily respond to that. And so you do want to mix it up. So the umbrella that pops up, the air horn, banging pots and pans, being aggressive and physically chasing out of the yard, like John said, but mixing it up. You have to keep in mind with these coyotes that they live in Arlington. They live essentially in Boston. So they're used to seeing people. They're used to seeing cars, traffic, modern society. So they're not going to be as skittish as would an animal in a rural situation. So you really do have to be to mix it up in terms of what you're doing to try to haze those animals. And so it can be spraying them with the hose if you have the hose handy, blowing an air horn, doing anything you can really think of to try to drive the animal off.
I would like to add to that you never want to throw anything directly at them. You could throw things near them to scare them away, but you never want to throw anything at them because if you injure them, you can't ever predict what an injured animal is going to do. So it's just not a good idea to hurt them. You want to scare them away, but you don't want to injure them in the process.
And I know a lot of folks are concerned and wondering what to do if the hazing efforts don't work and the coyote becomes more aggressive. At that point, what steps should somebody take to protect themselves, their kids, and their pets?
If a coyote is, I saw one of the questions that was submitted earlier, what do I do if a coyote is attacking my child? You defend your child with absolutely everything you have, and the same with yourself. So if it's the walking stick you have, it's, essentially all bets are off at that point in terms of what is allowed and what's permissible. Defend yourself, defend your child with everything. You are now a knockdown, drag out fight, and you scare that animal off, you chase it off, you do absolutely everything you have to do in those circumstances. And then call 911. Obviously defend your child or yourself first, but call 911. The Arlington police have the ability to get on scene faster than the environmental police or anyone else. They can get there in minutes and potentially resolve the situation if they can get there in time.
And that's great information. I know a lot of people were wondering, if they see a coyote, what should they do? So they do have a number. Anybody in Arlington that does see a coyote should call the police department at 781-643-1212. So talking a little bit about how to coyote-proof a yard, a lot of folks are wondering, especially since, John, you mentioned that coyotes can actually climb up into trees, how do fences help protect a yard? People are wondering if a 5-foot, a 6-foot fence may help prevent coyotes from getting into their yard in the first place. Do you have any advice or suggestions about that?
Coyotes can clear a 5-foot fence, no problem. And they can dig. They can dig very quickly. So protecting your dog in your yard just with a fence, it's probably not going to be all inclusive. There are some stuff you can do. There are coyote-proof fences, but you can actually go up to Home Depot and get you some strong wire and some 1-inch PVC. And as you know, most fences have posts with a section in between, and those posts are usually higher. So you put that PVC, between those posts, and what happens is the coyote jumps up, tries to hook his paws on there, and he just rolls off. So he can't grip and climb over. So you can try to do make your own coyote proof fence. You could do floodlights. Coyotes are neophobic. They don't like, they're afraid of like new things in their environment. So even by moving stuff around occasionally could actually, deter coyotes from your backyard. But the biggest deterrence I think you can do is just be with your animal. Just as long as you're out there with them, the chances of anything happening negative are really slim. So you just be out there with your animal. And also I want to say, people who are walking their dogs and stuff at night and they have flashlights, if you see a coyote and you shine the flashlight on them, just think about this. If you're walking down the street and a car is coming towards you with its lights on, can you see anything beyond the lights? Nothing. It's just black. So when you shine a light on a coyote when you're walking, all he sees is that light. He doesn't see what's behind it. So he might just come right up on you because he doesn't see a person. And usually that dog is going to be a few feet in front of that light. So he might be able to see the dog. So you want to take that flashlight and shine it on yourself so they see your face, your body. And then that way, most likely say, whoa, person, I'm out of here.
And I'd say in that circumstance too, use your voice. Make sure the coyote knows that you are a person. Make sure that you're shouting to it and letting it know you're a person, so they can get that association right away. Quickly back to the fence, we'd recommend a minimum of 6 feet for a fence that's going to keep a coyote out, and all the gaps and spaces of that fence have to be very small. If a coyote can fit its skull inside a gap, it can get inside. And like John said, they can dig as well. So burying the fence into the ground is always a good thing to do. And you want to make sure there aren't any objects around the edge. And in winter, if we have a 2-foot hard snowbank, your 6-foot fence is now a 4-foot fence. So just make sure that, they can't jump up on some debris or something on the outside of the fence and get in. And just be aware of those things. But as John said, it's always our recommendation that, the dog is on a leash at all times, and it's your presence on the other end of that leash that's going to prevent the negative encounter.
Awesome, all good suggestions. Now, I think moving on to a little bit of a different tone, I think a lot of people are wondering how coyotes are, important to our biodiversity and our ecological sustainability. Dave, I don't know if you're able to touch on that a little bit.
Yeah, sure. Coyotes, like all wild animals, have a role to play in the ecosystem. The coyotes, as John said, they're essentially our medium-sized carnivores like bobcats, fox, and these other animals. So they do prey primarily on smaller wildlife. So the woodchucks, the rabbits, the squirrels, and things. So they help to maintain and control those populations. So they do play an important role in maintaining levels, good levels of those species in the landscape.
And if coyotes were to be completely removed from any sort of environment or community, what kind of fallout impacts might that have?
Yeah, so certainly if they were removed, you could potentially have increases in those other species. So you're going to have more issues with rodents and those things. But briefly, as John said, efforts have been made in the past to try to eliminate coyotes from different areas, and it's virtually impossible to do so. So I do think it's important to remember that they really are going to be around, and so trying to develop the tools to coexist with them and to limit the amount of conflict that the citizens of Arlington have is really going to be key here. And those key things are removing the food sources. If you remove the food source, you remove the motivation for coyotes to be in town. And those food sources actually supplement the coyote population in the area. They provide additional food so more coyotes can live in town than would be otherwise able to. So if as individuals, as neighborhoods, as communities, you remove the food sources, so the garbage is all secured, compost is secured, no one's feeding pets outside, no one's feeding wild animals, the bird feeders are removed, really all food sources, the fruit trees, that's cleaned up. All of a sudden, there's not as much reason for coyotes to be in your yards and neighborhoods. They're in the cemetery now feeding on rabbits and squirrels rather than in your yards. So that's really one of the best things you can do as a community is to clean up those food sources. And then, as John said, as a community, haze the animals. The more people that are hazing them, the less comfortable they are around your homes. And they start to get that message over time. You're not welcome here, and you just can't be comfortable hanging out in people's backyards.
And we have some people asking that, what exactly does a den look like if they're out in the fells or any other nature preserve in the area? How might they identify a den and know to stay away?
Yeah, so a lot of times. Okay, sure.
Coyotes and a lot of different carnivores in this area, like red and gray fox, they tend to den on hillsides. Not always, but I think there's a higher percent of dens you can find on hillsides. And the reason is because they look out the hole, they get a good field of vision. In the morning, the sun comes out and they get all those thermal updrafts and they can smell food, prey, trouble. So nesting, building dens on hillsides is very common. But I've seen them all over the place, underneath decks and logs and just about anywhere. But they're I'd say about 12 inches or so in diameter. It's amazing to see an adult coyote come out of one of those because it seems like they couldn't fit. And that's actually something I did want to bring up during the presentation, which I didn't. Coyotes appear much, much larger than they really are. I've handled a bunch of them, and I could tell you that they're just, there's no logic to it. I was a vet tech in the Army 20 years, and by 15-year mark, I could guess dog weights within 2 or 3 pounds. And but with coyotes, I'm way off. I remember the first coyote I actually captured was in Arlington. Me and the old animal control officer went, and there was a coyote in the backyard, get hit by a car, and had fractured pelvis. And so we were putting him in the ACO van, and he had the rabies pole on his neck, and I went to grab the rump to lift it up and put it in the van, and it was like that, that gallon of milk in the refrigerator that's only has this much in it, but you can't see it. You think it's full, and so you put all your might into it. So this particular coyote, I was judging to be like 40, 45 pounds, and I almost threw him through the van. But when he got to Tufts Wildlife Clinic, they weighed him in at 23 pounds. So they can really look a lot big, especially in the wintertime. They got up to 6 inches of fur, so they can look much, much bigger. So when we hear people say, "Oh yeah, it's big as a German Shepherd," he might look that way, but chances of him being over 40 pounds is like really almost, really, really slim. So although they may appear really big, weight-wise, not even close.
I'm just reading through the questions to get a few more. So somebody was asking if they come across multiple coyotes, how does that change how one might haze them?
Yeah, the response is really still going to be the same. Be aggressive, be bold. Obviously, don't put yourself in a dangerous situation. If you're out at night and you encounter a couple of animals, try to be bold and aggressive and scare them off initially, but don't necessarily engage with them if you don't have to in those circumstances.
I could say something, Annette. I had come across something that I read a couple of months ago, and I've been sharing it with people as I've spoken to them, that have called with concerns. And in this article that I read, it mentioned that, when you have a green or black or even a white trash bag, and you kind of flip it before you put it into the barrel, you flip it full of air, you separate it, flip it, and you put it in the barrel. They were saying to carry a trash bag with you, a good sized bag, rubbish bag. And if you are feeling uncomfortable and a coyote or coyotes are too close to you, you could always take that bag out. Now you've already opened it, right? And tried it out first so that you're not fumbling with which end do I open and trying to separate it. You've already got that down. So when you take that bag out and just give it a good snap, that movement and the sound is something that they're not familiar with. And I do believe, I'd appreciate your input, that I think that it would scare them. They're not familiar with that. And I think it would take them back, almost like snapping open an umbrella, and facing it at them. I know people have used that for turkeys, but I feel like that kind of movement right at them. And as John had said, making eye contact, get your alpha up, eye contact, and I think it would work. Yeah, I thought it was a great idea.
I think it would. I think, coyotes, anything new to them is scary.
Mm-hmm.
They're big chickens. I'm telling you, these animals are big chickens. I trapped a couple back when it was illegal, and you get them in the trap and they just tremble. They just go up on one end. None of them ever showed any aggression to me. Excuse me. But I think that this is a type of animal that, anything new is definitely going to catch their attention, and they're probably going to be fearful at first. That's going to be their initial, thing, to be afraid of it.
And speaking of chickens, in Arlington here, we have a lot of backyard chickens, so folks keep hens. Does that attract coyotes? Does that pose any sort of risk?
Well, it's going to attract rodents, and rodents will attract coyotes, and chickens will attract coyotes too. They'll smell them, but I'm trying to remember when exactly. But when Belmont went to doing the chicken thing and doing the inspections, I did them for years, and we only had, I think, 2 chickens preyed on, and they weren't from coyotes. And one was from a fisher, and one was from a hawk. So, I wish I could tell you how many years we're talking about here, but at least 5 to 6 years that I was in ACO in Belmont, we had no issues with chickens and coyotes at all.
And I had chickens, if I may. I'm sorry, Dave, did I just interrupt? But just quickly, I had chickens here at my home in Burlington, and I had a hawk attempt to get the chickens, once, and being another opportunistic predator, right? I knew that it would be back and try again. I had a fox that was successful taking one of my chickens right in front of me, and I knew it would be back. So I locked the girls up for like 3 or 4 days because I knew it would be back. And didn't I hear them screaming and carrying on? 2 days later, after the fox, it was successful. And I ran out, and the fox was at the cage in their pen, trying to get in at them, but they were locked up. I never saw the fox again. I've never had a coyote come in. I did see hawks, but being opportunistic, in other words, if they get a meal, they're going to try to come back and get another meal. I kept them locked up so that the next time they came back, they were not successful. Then I let them free range only if I was outside with them. I never had another problem, but that's.
Yeah, coyotes will definitely return to those areas that produce food over and over again. Right. And I'll tell you something else coyotes will do. Say you got a little Shih Tzu or just a little small dog, and you bring them out, you put them out in the yard, and you stand on the deck and you watch your dog while he's out there. And coyote trots by and sees your little dog, you're just going to take note of it and keep on his way. And then maybe a couple of weeks later, he comes by, you might see that dog again. Now he's going to say, I'm going to keep an eye on this place. So now he's going to change his little route and come check in, and he's going to look for that one opportunity that you're going to give him by mistake. You know, the phone rings, you go in the house or whatever, boom, he's going to be there and he's going to take it. So you just got to be vigilant with these animals. It's just, you know, it's sorry to say that, but they're not going away, and we just got to change our behavior a little bit. And I believe we could coexist and reap the benefits of having a top predator around that we haven't had for such a long time, and get along.
Yeah, and I would just say they also have an amazing sense of smell. So your dog's going out in the backyard and they're urinating, they're defecating, and so the coyote can smell that. So they don't even have to see them in order to know, okay, this yard has a dog, this yard has a dog, etc. And so, like John said, you're kind of on the route in the places they check. Going back to the chickens, it's just important to build as good a coop as you possibly can. Make sure they are secure, because there's not only the coyotes, there's Fisher, there's the hawks, there's fox, you know, so protect your property there, build a tight coop that those animals can't get into, and that's going to be your best bet.
And we have mentioned, you guys have mentioned a number of times that things like rodents and rabbits are some of the foods that coyotes will hunt. Do you think there's any correlation between the increase in some of those animal populations and, you know, the more frequent sightings of coyotes?
No, I think people often ask that, you know, it's like, well, if we have coyotes in town, why do we have so many rabbits or squirrels or something all of a sudden? The populations of those species can fluctuate drastically, completely independently of the amount of predators on the landscape. Essentially, it's very difficult for predators to completely control those populations. So, for example, if suddenly you have a really abundant acorn year, you're going to see a spike in the number of chipmunks and squirrels the next year, you know, because they're going to produce more young. And so you can see these surges in those populations, regardless of any changes in the coyote or the predator population in the area. So it's tough to make a direct comparison between them. And
Diane, I think some people are wondering that, you know, if you're not available when somebody calls with a coyote sighting, is the Arlington Police Department still able to respond or take that information down?
Absolutely. So if there's a situation, and not just for, you know, if you're on the bike path and a coyote trots across the bike path, looks at you and keeps right on moving, that's normal coyote behavior, right? And we're all on alert and a bit focused on the coyotes right now because of recent incidences. And I don't think that every sighting needs, as long as it's normal from a distance, it looks at you and carries on or is acting normally. If there's a situation and you need help, absolutely, you call. If it's a serious situation, you call 911, right? And they will be right there. And if it's something that you're concerned about, but doesn't need immediate assistance, you can always call 781-643-1212, which is the dispatch number, and dispatch will get you in touch with the right person, whether that's me or the police officers if I'm not there. So there'll always be somebody that will be able to answer a question, or if you need help, someone will be there to help you right away. If it's a serious situation, you call 911 without a doubt. Like a few of the serious incidents we've had, 911, someone will be right there. Absolutely.
Awesome. That's definitely reassuring. And I know we've spoken a lot about hazing, but there continue to be questions. And some folks are wondering that, you know, if you're in a nature reserve, not necessarily the suburban situation, is it still an appropriate time to haze a coyote, or are there other, you know, ways that a human can kind of back out of that situation when it's, you know, a nature reserve?
I think it's important to understand the way coyotes read your behaviors. So this goes whether you're in the backyard, you're on the street, you're in the nature preserve. If you cede ground, you're essentially ceding dominance to that animal. So if every time someone's walking down a trail or a bike path or a park and they encounter coyotes and they always back off, the coyotes are always then becoming the dominant animal. That can actually build over time, and they can now feel more emboldened in those places. So still being aggressive towards them, being assertive towards them in those places is perfectly fine. It's not going to hurt the coyotes for you to yell at them and be bold and aggressive to them in those places. So you can still practice those same behaviors that you do in other places.
Yeah, I agree.
Awesome. So I think, you know, we're hitting about the end of our time here, and we've gotten through a good number of the questions. Like I said, anything we weren't able to get to today, we certainly will create a question and answer sheet and make sure that's posted to arlingtonma.gov so everybody can have access to those answers. But I just want to go to each of the panelists and see if there's any final message you want to leave everybody with, you know, about any of the information that we've provided today, or just any last thoughts. So we can go ahead and start with John as our presenter.
Okay, yeah, I would like to say a couple things. You know, keep calm. We're talking about, you know, maybe a 30-pound animal. It's not a grizzly bear. It's an animal that we can manage. Also want to say that you have a great animal control officer. So, you know, all those sightings that are normal, I would call her, not the police station. But you know, she's a great ACO. She knows what she's doing. So I would depend on her a lot. And other than that, I just want to thank everyone for attending. And you know, coyotes, it's a tough subject sometimes, but they really can do us some good if we could just learn to coexist with them. And lastly, oh yeah, one more thing. There's on projectcoyote.org, we have a ton of information, all kinds of handouts that you can download. There's really a lot of information at www.projectcoyote.org. Thank you.
Thanks. And Dave, if you have anything you want to leave us with.
Yeah, I think you know, to reiterate what John said is like these animals are going to be around. So it is important to learn how to coexist with them. I completely understand people's concerns. But these are rare occurrences, and hopefully, you know, we're not going to see anything like that again in Arlington. But you know, the big things to limit the conflict again are removing those food sources, hazing the animals, and protecting your pets, and that's going to go a very long way to preventing any future conflicts that you're going to have. You know, and every time, you know, you haze a coyote one day, you see it the next day, haze it again, haze it again, haze it again, and it'll start to get that impression that it's not welcome there. Like John's site, so we are a resource for you at the Division of Fish and Wildlife. Our main office is in Westboro. You can call us there, and if you have certain questions, we can directly answer those. Again, our website, mass.gov/masswildlife. Lots of information about living with coyotes there as well. But don't hesitate to reach out to us if you need assistance as well. Either our main office in Westboro or our regional office that covers your area, which is in Air.
Thank you. And Diane, anything you want to leave our viewers with today?
I thank John for presenting and for Dave for being a part of this. They have so much knowledge. I always learn something new every time I hear John speak, and having Dave here as well was just such an added bonus. I thank you both, and to the Board of Health for having this, because this is I'm getting so many calls in Arlington, and people are concerned. People are very concerned, and just know that it's being taken very seriously. We do not want anybody, any child, ever to be hurt like they were. So it's being taken seriously. I want you safe, exactly what they said in hazing. And a big part of that, I know, is eye contact, right? When I talk at the schools, I talk to the children about eyes in front likes to hunt, eyes on the side likes to hide. So we talk about predator, eyes in front, like a coyote, a mountain lion, a bear, fox, hawks, owls, eagles, humans, right? And then the prey species, eyes on the side, like rabbits, deer, squirrels, the animals that are the prey species. So when you make direct eye contact to a predator, eye contact to eye contact, it's seen as, you put your alpha up, put your shoulders back, like John said, and make eye contact. And that's seen as, I mean business. You may be a predator, but I'm a bigger predator, right? And I'm not taking anything from you. So that's in, if in a situation, if you're feeling uncomfortable and it's a little bit too close, you make that eye contact, you get your alpha up. In a situation that's more than that, as we mentioned before, you call 911 and they will be there immediately. Any sightings or any questions, you can always call me. I'm happy to talk about it.
Awesome. Well, thank you all so much for being part of this presentation. We really appreciate your time and all the insight you were able to provide. Just, as a final note, again, this presentation was recorded, so it will be available later for anybody who wasn't able to attend. And that information will be found on arlingtonma.gov. So I hope you all have a wonderful evening, and thank you again for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night, everybody.